Your money now has an expiration date. Imagine your phone buzzes. It's a notification, a good one. A $1,000 government payment has just arrived in your digital wallet. Instant, seamless, convenient. But then a second notification appears. Just moments later, it reads, "These funds will expire in exactly 30 days. A countdown timer begins next to your balance." Another line of text clarifies, "Eligible for use at approved vendors for essential goods only." This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is not a scene from a dystopian film. This is programmable money, and it is the undeclared primary feature of the central bank digital currencies being prepared across the globe right now. The money in your account is no longer a store of value you control. It has been transformed into a temporary voucher, a tool to direct your behavior, a digital leash. The official narrative will tell you this is about efficiency and fighting crime. That is the cover story. The reality is that the very nature of money is being rewritten without your consent. The question is no longer if this system will arrive. The question is, how did they build the cage and what happens when they decide to lock the door? The Trojan horse of convenience. Every major policy shift, every fundamental change to the structure of society is sold to the public with a story. It is never a story about power or control. It is always a story about safety, progress, and convenience. The introduction of a central bank digital currency is no different. The narrative has been carefully crafted, focus grouped, and deployed by the most powerful, unelected financial bodies in the world, from the Bank for International Settlements in Switzerland to the Federal Reserve in Washington. And the story they tell is built on three seemingly unshakable pillars. The first pillar is the fight against crime. They tell us that physical cash is the lifeblood of the black market, the preferred medium of terrorists, tax evaders, and money launderers. A fully digital, traceable currency, they argue, would create a transparent financial system where illicit activity has nowhere to hide. Every transaction would be recorded on a central ledger, making it trivial for authorities to follow the money and cut off funding for criminal enterprises. It is a compelling vision of a safer, more lawful world. The second pillar is the promise of financial inclusion. We are reminded that millions of people around the world remain unbanked. They exist in the shadows of the formal economy, without access to credit, savings accounts, or modern payment systems. A CBDC, the story goes, would solve this overnight. Anyone with a basic smartphone could have a digital wallet directly connected to the central bank. It's presented as a great leap forward for economic equality, a way to bring the most vulnerable into the fold. And the third pillar is the siren song of efficiency. Our current payment systems, we are told, are antiquated. Bank transfers can take days, cross-border payments are expensive and slow, and the whole system is a patchwork of legacy technology. A CBDC built on a modern digital infrastructure would be instantaneous. Payments would clear in seconds, not days. The entire economy would become faster, sleeker, and more competitive on the global stage. Safety, equality, and speed. These are the promises inscribed on the gift being offered to us. It is a beautiful, modern, technological marvel, a Trojan horse wheeled to the gates of the city, and we are being encouraged to open the gates and welcome it in. But as any student of history knows, it is vital to look inside the horse. Because when you apply even a moderate level of scrutiny, the official narrative begins to fall apart. Let's start with the pillar of fighting crime. The idea that physical cash is the primary enabler of major financial crime is a convenient fiction. While street-level crime certainly uses cash, the vast, systemic money laundering that truly props up global criminal empires does not happen in suitcases full of $100 bills. It happens in broad daylight, through the very commercial banking system that a CBDC is meant to augment. The United Nations estimates that up to $2 trillion is laundered annually. That is not happening with cash. It is happening through networks of shell corporations, manipulated trade invoices, real estate transactions in London and New York, and often with the willful blindness of the very banks that are supposed to prevent it. Major banks have been fined billions upon billions of dollars for AML, or anti-money laundering, violations. The system is not failing because of cash. It is failing because of institutional complicity at the highest levels. Removing cash from the equation doesn't solve this. It merely attacks the privacy of ordinary citizens while leaving the core mechanisms of elite financial crime untouched. The war on cash has always been a proxy war on individual anonymity. Now let's examine the second pillar, financial inclusion. Is a CBDC really the solution for the unbanked? The reality is that people are unbanked for a complex set of reasons. It's not simply a lack of technology. It's a lack of trust in financial institutions. It's the inability to meet minimum balance requirements. It's the lack of official government identification. It's a desire to operate with a degree of privacy, away from the eyes of the state or predatory lenders. A mandatory digital system does not fix these problems. In fact, it can make them worse, forcing people who distrust the system into a version of it that is even more centralized and opaque. More importantly, this problem has already been solved, organically, from the bottom up. Look at M-Pesa in Kenya, a simple mobile phone-based payment system that brought financial services to millions of people without a central bank redesigning the nature of money. Look at the UPI system in India or Pix in Brazil. The private sector and existing public-private partnerships are already innovating at a staggering pace. The idea that we need a top-down, state-controlled CBDC for inclusion is a solution in search of a problem. Finally, we come to the pillar of speed and efficiency. The claim that our payment systems are fundamentally broken is a gross exaggeration. Yes, some legacy systems are slow, but the idea that we are stuck in the financial dark ages is false. In the United States, the Federal Reserve itself launched FedNow, an instant payment service. We have Zelle, Venmo, Cash App. In Europe, they have the SEPA Instant Credit Transfer Scheme. These systems already provide real-time transactions for the vast majority of consumer and business needs. Are there improvements to be made, especially in cross-border payments? Absolutely. But these are incremental engineering challenges, not existential crises that require a complete reinvention of currency itself. You do not need to change the fundamental properties of money to make a bank transfer happen a few seconds faster. So the pillars begin to look weak. The official justifications feel thin, like a cover story. If a CBDC is not truly necessary to fight crime, not essential for financial inclusion, and not required for faster payments, then why is there such an immense, coordinated global push to implement one? Why are central bankers from every major economy suddenly in lockstep, publishing white papers and running pilot programs for a technology whose stated goals are already being met? The answer is simple. It is because the stated goals are not the real goals. The convenience is a distraction. The efficiency is a marketing slogan. The Trojan horse was not built to deliver safety and inclusion to the citizens of Troy. It was built to get an army inside the walls. And the army hiding inside the CBDC is a single, revolutionary, and deeply transformative technological capability that is never mentioned in the public sales pitch. A capability that changes the definition of money from an asset you own to a permission slip granted to you by the state. That capability is programmability. The ghost in the machine, programmability. The word programmability sounds sterile, technical, even boring. It's a term that system architects and software engineers use. It is deliberately chosen for its lack of emotional weight. But hidden inside this bland, technical term is a concept so revolutionary it will redefine the relationship between the individual, their money, and the state for the next century. It is the ghost in the new financial machine, the invisible logic that will govern every transaction, and the true reason for the global push towards a CBDC. To understand programmable money, you must first understand the money you use today. Whether it's a physical dollar bill in your pocket or a number in your commercial bank account, that money has certain fundamental properties. It is fungible, meaning $1 is the same as any other dollar. It is permissionless at the point of use. You don't need to ask for approval to spend it. And most importantly, it is a neutral bearer asset. It doesn't have a memory. It doesn't have rules embedded within it. The dollar you use to buy a book is the same dollar you can use to buy a gallon of gas, or put into a savings account, or give to a political cause. The money itself is dumb. It has no opinion on how you use it. Programmable money changes all of this. It transforms money from a neutral, passive asset into an active, intelligent tool of policy. A CBDC is not just a digital representation of the dollars we have now. It is a completely new type of money, one where each unit can be tagged with data and embedded with rules. Think of it less like a digital dollar and more like a digital food stamp or a corporate gift card, but for the entire economy. The most profound and easily understood feature of programmability is the expiry date. As we saw in the introduction, a central authority could issue stimulus payments, tax rebates, or universal basic income that must be spent within a specific time frame, say 30 or 90 days. If you don't spend it, it vanishes from your account. This isn't a deduction. The money itself simply ceases to exist. The code inside the currency self-destructs. This feature alone completely upends the concept of money as a store of value, turning it purely into a medium of exchange that must be used on a schedule determined by the issuer. The very act of saving becomes impossible for those targeted funds. But expiry dates are just the beginning. The next layer of control is spending restrictions. The rules embedded in a CBDC can dictate what you are allowed to buy. For example, funds designated for welfare could be programmed to be spent only on approved items like food and housing, and would be rejected if you tried to buy alcohol, cigarettes, or a lottery ticket. The transaction would simply fail at the point of sale. Taking this a step further, these restrictions could be tied to broader policy goals. Imagine a future where, in the name of fighting climate change, your digital wallet is allocated a certain number of carbon credits each month. If you try to buy gasoline after exceeding your limit, the transaction is declined. If the state wants to discourage the consumption of red meat, it can program the currency to make beef purchases more expensive, or block them entirely after a certain threshold. Then there are geographic restrictions, or geofencing. Funds could be programmed to work only within a certain city, state, or even a specific economic zone. This could be used to try and stimulate a depressed local economy, but it could also be used to restrict the movement of citizens. Imagine being unable to buy a bus ticket out of town during a period of civil unrest because your funds are locked to your home district. These rules can also be automated and dynamic, responding to data in real time. For instance, automatic fines could be deducted directly from your wallet the moment a traffic camera identifies you speeding. There would be no due process, no court appearance, just an instant, algorithmically enforced penalty. Your digital wallet could be linked to your social credit score, your health records, your online activity. If you share what the government deems misinformation online, a rule could be triggered that reduces your ability to spend or blocks you from certain platforms. This is the fundamental shift. Your money is no longer a sovereign asset that you own and control. It becomes a permission-based voucher, its use contingent on your compliance with a set of rules you have no say in creating. You are no longer a citizen exercising economic freedom. You are a user, operating within the terms and conditions of a financial service provided by the central bank. This isn't a far-fetched conspiracy theory. This is the openly stated ambition of the system's architects. Agustin Carstens, the general manager of the Bank for International Settlements, the central bank of central banks, said it plainly in 2020. He stated that with a CBDC, the central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability, and they will have the technology to enforce that. He contrasted this directly with cash, where they don't know who is using a $100 bill. With a CBDC, the central bank will know and will be able to control. This is the true power of programmability. It's not about efficiency. It is about control. It is about turning money into a direct instrument of social and economic engineering. It allows for the implementation of policy not through the slow, messy process of legislation and democratic debate, but through the instant, frictionless, and unbending logic of computer code. Every transaction you make becomes a data point, feeding a central system that can then nudge, coerce, or force you to behave in a manner that the state deems appropriate. The ghost in the machine is a micromanager, an enforcer, and a warden, all rolled into one, and it will be built into the very fabric of the money we are all forced to use. The end of saving, a perpetual motion economy. The social control mechanisms of programmable money are terrifying, but they are, in some ways, a secondary benefit for the system's architects. The primary, driving motivation behind the push for a CBDC is not social, but macroeconomic. It is about solving a problem that has plagued central bankers for decades, a problem that acts as a fundamental limit on their power to manage the economy. That problem is called the zero lower bound. To understand this, we need to look at the main tool a central bank uses to either cool down or stimulate the economy: the interest rate. When the economy is overheating and inflation is high, they raise interest rates. This makes borrowing more expensive, encouraging people and businesses to save money rather than spend it, which cools the economy down. Conversely, when the economy is in a recession, they cut interest rates. This makes borrowing cheaper, encouraging spending and investment to get things moving again. But what happens when they cut interest rates all the way to zero? In a recession, they might want to cut them even further into negative territory to provide an even stronger jolt of stimulus. A negative interest rate of, say, -5% would mean that if you kept $100 in your bank account for a year, you would only have $95 left at the end. It's a direct tax on saving. The goal is to make holding cash so painful that you are forced to spend or invest it, whether you want to or not. Here is the problem for central bankers. In our current system, they can't effectively enforce deeply negative interest rates because of the existence of physical cash. If a bank tried to charge you 5% to hold your digital money, you would simply go to the ATM, withdraw your cash, and store it under your mattress for free. This ability to opt out into physical cash creates a floor, a zero lower bound, below which they cannot effectively push interest rates. Cash acts as an emergency escape, hatched from punitive monetary policy. A retail CBDC, held directly in accounts at the central bank, eliminates this escape hatch. If there is no physical cash to withdraw into, and your only option is to hold the state-issued digital currency, you are trapped. The central bank can then impose deeply negative interest rates at will. A -5%, -10%, or even -20% rate becomes technically trivial to implement. They simply program the money to decay in value over time. This is the holy grail for a certain school of Keynesian economics. It gives the central planner a godlike tool to manage aggregate demand. In their view, recessions are caused by people irrationally hoarding money instead of spending it. By making saving a guaranteed loss, they believe they can smooth out the business cycle and create a kind of perpetual motion economy, one that never truly slows down because consumption is constant and mandatory. The expiry date feature we discussed earlier is simply a more targeted and aggressive form of this same principle. A negative interest rate is a slow, steady tax on saving. An expiry date is a guillotine. Both are designed to achieve the same end, to destroy money as a store of value and force it to be used only as a medium of exchange. They want to control the velocity of money, the speed at which it moves through the economy, and they have decided that individual saving is a wrench in their machine. Think about what this means for the average person. The very idea of thrift, of putting money aside for a rainy day, for retirement, for your children's future, becomes a fool's errand. Your savings become a liability, a melting ice cube that the state is actively trying to shrink. You are pushed further and further out on the risk curve, forced to either spend on consumption you may not need or speculate in financial markets you may not understand, just to preserve your wealth. The prudent saver is punished. The impulsive consumer is rewarded. This is a profound and deliberate re-engineering of social values embedded directly into the code of our money. And who benefits from this? Cui bono. The primary beneficiary is the state itself and the heavily indebted financial system it props up. An economy built on forced, constant consumption is an economy that generates constant tax revenue. It is an economy that can sustain otherwise unsustainable levels of government and corporate debt. If people are not allowed to save, that capital doesn't just disappear. It is channeled into consumption and financial assets, propping up corporate earnings and stock market valuations. It creates a permanent stimulus loop, one that doesn't require messy political debates in Congress over spending packages. The stimulus is no longer a bill that must be passed. It is a feature of the monetary base itself. The Treasury and the Federal Reserve gain a direct, surgical tool to inject purchasing power into the economy, bypassing the legislative branch entirely. It represents an unprecedented consolidation of fiscal and monetary power in the hands of unelected technocrats. The dream of the central planner is a perfectly predictable, perfectly controllable economic machine. Human behavior, with its irrational fears and prudent instincts to save, is the unpredictable variable they seek to eliminate. By transforming money from a tool of personal freedom into a tool of state policy, they believe they can finally achieve this. They are building a system where your personal balance sheet is merely a lever for them to pull in service of their macroeconomic models. The end of saving is not an unfortunate side effect of this system. It is the central feature. It is the entire point. The digital leash, from nudge to shove. If the macroeconomic goal of a CBDC is to eliminate saving and enforce consumption, the socio-political goal is to create a frictionless system of behavioral control. For the last few decades, governments and corporations have become obsessed with the field of behavioral economics, famously known as nudge theory. The idea is that instead of issuing direct commands, you can subtly design choices and environments to guide people towards a desired outcome while maintaining the illusion of free will. Putting healthy food at eye level in a cafeteria is a nudge. Automatically enrolling employees in a retirement plan is a nudge. These are soft, often invisible, forms of influence. Programmable money allows the architects of the state to evolve beyond the nudge. It gives them a toolkit to move from a gentle suggestion to a hard-coded, algorithmically enforced shove. The digital currency itself becomes the delivery mechanism for a new kind of social engineering, one that is direct, scalable, and inescapable. The leash, once invisible, becomes a tangible chain woven into every transaction. Let's move from the abstract to the concrete. Imagine a government committed to a green energy agenda. Today, they might use nudges like tax credits for electric vehicles or public awareness campaigns. In a CBDC world, they have a far more powerful set of levers. Every citizen could be issued a personal carbon score, tracked in real time through their spending. Your digital wallet would be linked to this score. Every purchase, a gallon of gas, a plane ticket, a steak dinner, would add to your carbon footprint. Once you hit your monthly or annual limit, the currency itself could be programmed to decline transactions for high-carbon items. Your card would simply be rejected at the gas pump. The purchase of that flight to go on vacation would be blocked. It's no longer a suggestion to be more green. It's a command enforced by the monetary system itself. Consider public health initiatives. A government could decide to combat obesity by programming the CBDC to limit the purchase of sugary drinks or fast food. You might be allocated a certain number of unhealthy purchase credits per month. Once you've used them, your CBDC would be invalid at McDonald's or the candy aisle at the grocery store. Conversely, they could reward good behavior. Your wallet could be automatically credited with a few extra dollars every time you visit the gym, tracked via your phone's location data. Your health insurance provider, now linked to the central bank's ledger, could enforce these rules directly. Your choices about what to eat and how to live are no longer entirely your own. They are managed through a system of financial rewards and punishments. This system of control can be extended to any policy goal the state deems important. One of the most obvious targets is the ownership of firearms. A government wishing to restrict gun ownership could simply program the CBDC to be invalid at any store that sells firearms or ammunition. There would be no need for a controversial new law or a constitutional amendment. They could simply turn off the ability to pay for these items. The right to bear arms becomes meaningless if you are financially incapable of exercising it. The same logic could be applied to restricting the purchase of certain books, subscriptions to news outlets deemed subversive, or donations to political organizations that are out of favor with the ruling party. It becomes a tool of silent, bureaucratic censorship, enforced not by police in the streets, but by code in the cloud. This is the evolution from nudge to shove. The nudge maintains the facade of choice. The shove eliminates it. Behavioral economics becomes algorithmic enforcement. The beauty of this system from the perspective of a central planner is its efficiency. There is no need for cumbersome enforcement agencies. The rules are baked into the infrastructure. Compliance is not a choice. It is a prerequisite for participating in the economy. Every transaction becomes a point of control, a potential choke point. Furthermore, this digital leash can be personalized and dynamic. Using the vast amounts of data collected from our digital lives, the system could create a unique set of rules for every individual. Your spending limits, your rewards, your punishments, all could be tailored to your specific behavioral profile, your political leanings, your social graph. If the system's algorithm flags you as a potential dissident, it could subtly tighten your leash, restricting your ability to travel or make certain purchases, all without you ever being formally charged with a crime. Think of the Canadian trucker protests in 2022. The government, unable to disperse the protesters, took the unprecedented step of freezing the bank accounts of participants and even those who donated small amounts of money to their cause. It was a powerful and effective move, but it was also clumsy. It required emergency orders and the cooperation of commercial banks. It was a visible, controversial act. In a CBDC world, this process would be silent, instant, and surgical. There would be no need for an emergency order. A government official could simply add a list of names to a block list, and instantly, those individuals would be cut off from their funds. Their digital wallets would be frozen, or perhaps programmed to only allow for the purchase of a small amount of food from a government-approved store. It is the power to deperson an individual from the economy with the click of a button. This is the ultimate shove, the complete and total financial unpersoning of anyone who steps out of line. The digital leash is not just a tool for guiding the herd. It is a weapon for isolating and neutralizing any dissenting member. The pilot programs are already live. It is tempting to dismiss these warnings as speculative, as a paranoid projection into a distant, dystopian future. But this is not theory. This is not a thought experiment. The global rollout of central bank digital currencies is already underway, and the features of control we have discussed are not hidden in secret blueprints. They are being actively tested on live populations in multiple countries around the world. These pilot programs are the laboratories where the tools of financial control are being refined. The most advanced and comprehensive pilot program is, unsurprisingly, in China. The digital yuan, or e-CNY, has been in development for years and has already been used by hundreds of millions of citizens for billions of dollars worth of transactions. The Chinese state is not shy about its intentions. The e-CNY is a tool of state surveillance and control, designed to give the People's Bank of China perfect visibility into the economic activity of its citizens, and to strengthen the grip of the Communist Party. Crucially, the e-CNY has been designed from the ground up with programmability at its core. Chinese authorities have already conducted numerous trials using the very features we've described. They have airdropped e-CNY into citizens' wallets with strict expiry dates to force spending and stimulate local economies. They have distributed transportation subsidies that can only be used for specific bus routes or subway lines. The e-CNY is also deeply integrated with the burgeoning social credit system. While not yet fully implemented, the architecture is clear. In the future, a citizen with a low social credit score could find their e-CNY programmed with lower spending limits or blocked from purchasing luxury goods or high-speed train tickets. China is the vanguard, the proof of concept, demonstrating to the world that a fully programmable, surveillance-based monetary system is not only possible, but achievable on a massive scale. But it's not just authoritarian regimes. Let's look at Nigeria. In 2021, Nigeria became one of the first countries in Africa to officially launch a CBDC, the e-Naira. The public rollout was framed, as always, around the promise of financial inclusion and modernizing the payment system. However, adoption by the public was abysmal. Less than 1% of the population chose to use the e-Naira voluntarily in its first year. People preferred the anonymity and reliability of physical cash. So the Nigerian government moved from persuasion to coercion. In late 2022, they announced a draconian demonetization policy, invalidating large denomination banknotes and severely restricting the amount of cash that individuals and businesses could withdraw from ATMs. The goal was explicit: to force citizens out of cash and onto the state-controlled e-Naira platform. The result was economic chaos. Widespread protests erupted as people were unable to access their own money to buy food and conduct basic commerce. The Nigerian experiment is a crucial case study. It demonstrates that, when faced with a population that freely chooses not to adopt a CBDC, the state's next move is not to improve the product, but to cripple the competition, in this case, physical cash. It reveals the iron fist inside the velvet glove of financial inclusion. Even in smaller nations, the testing grounds are active. The Bahamas launched the sand dollar back in 2020, one of the world's very first CBDCs. While its stated aim was to provide financial services to the remote islands of the archipelago, It serves as a valuable data gathering project for the international banking community. It allows them to study adoption patterns, technical hurdles, and regulatory challenges in a small, contained environment. The sand dollar, like other CBDCs, creates a direct link between the citizen and the central bank, laying the groundwork for more advanced features of programmability to be introduced later. Each of these small nations acts as a petri dish, allowing the larger powers to observe and learn before they implement these systems on their own populations. These are not isolated incidents. Over 100 countries, representing more than 95% of global GDP, are in some stage of exploring, developing, or piloting a CBDC. The Bank for International Settlements, the hub of global central bank cooperation, is actively coordinating these efforts through projects like Project Icebreaker, Project Enbridge, and Project Dunbar, which are all designed to build the international infrastructure for CBDCs to communicate with each other. This is a coordinated, global, top-down movement. The evidence is undeniable. The dystopian features are not hypothetical bugs, they are the intended features. Expiry dates are being tested in China. Forced adoption by eliminating cash is being trialed in Nigeria. The complete transaction graph of a nation's citizens is being built in the Bahamas. Each pilot program, regardless of its public-facing justification, serves the same ultimate purpose: to normalize the concept of state-controlled digital money, to work out the technical kinks, and to gather the data needed for a full-scale global implementation. They are building the prison, testing the locks, and training the guards, all in plain sight. The kill switch, a central point of failure. In the world of system design, there is a concept known as a single point of failure. It is the part of a system that, if it fails, will stop the entire system from working. Engineers and architects spend immense amounts of time and resources trying to eliminate single points of failure, building in redundancy and decentralization to create resilience. The proposed architecture of a central bank digital currency does the exact opposite. It takes our currently distributed, somewhat resilient financial system and deliberately concentrates all power and all functionality into a single, centralized ledger. It is, by design, the largest single point of failure ever conceived. This introduces a level of systemic fragility that is difficult to overstate. The first and most obvious threat is to the physical infrastructure itself. A CBDC is entirely dependent on a functioning electrical grid and telecommunications network. Every transaction, from buying a cup of coffee to receiving your salary, requires electricity, servers, and data connections to function. Consider the impact of a prolonged, widespread power outage. In our current system, society could still function, albeit with difficulty. Physical cash would become king. People could still buy food, fuel, and essential supplies. Commerce would not grind to a complete halt. In a cashless society built entirely on a CBDC, a grid-down event is a civilization-level threat. If the power is out, the economy is off. No one can buy anything. No one can sell anything. The entire system freezes. The same is true for a significant telecommunications failure, whether from a cyber attack, physical sabotage, or even a natural phenomenon like a major solar flare, a Carrington-level event that could fry electronic circuits on a continental scale. By eliminating the offline, analog backup of physical cash, we are making our entire economic existence dependent on the flawless, uninterrupted functioning of highly complex and vulnerable technological systems. We are removing the lifeboats from the ship. The second critical point of failure is cybersecurity. A centralized ledger containing the real-time financial data of every citizen and business in a country would be the single most valuable target for cyber warfare in human history. State-sponsored hackers, Sophisticated criminal organizations and terrorist groups would have a clear, singular target. A successful attack could take many forms. An attacker might try to steal funds, but the more terrifying prospect is an attack on the integrity of the ledger itself. Imagine an attack that alters balances, erases transaction histories, or simply corrupts the entire database, making it impossible to know who owns what. The economic chaos and social unrest would be instantaneous and catastrophic. The defenders of the system will claim that a central bank's ledger would be protected by state-of-the-art military-grade cybersecurity. But the history of cyber warfare is a history of supposedly impenetrable systems being breached. From the U.S. Office of Personnel Management to the SolarWinds hack that compromised countless government agencies and corporations, the lesson is clear. Any centralized system can be, and eventually will be, compromised. To route every single transaction in a nation through one single point is to invite a disaster of unprecedented scale. But the most dangerous point of failure is not technical, it is political. A CBDC doesn't just centralize data, it centralizes power. And at the heart of that power is the ultimate kill switch, the ability to exclude an individual, a group, or even an entire region from the economy with a single command. We have already discussed how this could be used against political dissidents, as seen in the Canadian trucker protests, but the implications are far broader. This kill switch gives the state the power of financial life and death over every single citizen. Imagine you are flagged, correctly or incorrectly, by an algorithm as a person of interest. Your access to your money could be instantly suspended, pending an investigation that could take months or years. There is no physical cash to fall back on. You are rendered economically inert, unable to pay your rent, buy food for your family, or hire a lawyer to defend yourself. You are guilty until proven innocent, and the punishment is meted out before any trial. This power could be used for collective punishment. If a particular community is the site of a protest or civil unrest, the state could simply turn off the CBDC for that entire zip code, financially strangling the population into submission. It could be used to enforce compliance with unpopular mandates. Imagine a scenario where proof of a new vaccination is required to unlock your digital wallet each month. Those who refuse to comply are simply unable to participate in the economy. This is the ultimate concentration of power. It merges the power of the state, the power of the central bank, and the power of the technology stack into a single, unaccountable entity. In our current system, power is somewhat distributed. If you have a problem with one bank, you can move to another. If the government tries to seize your assets, it requires a court order and due process. A CBDC system collapses all of these checks and balances into a single, streamlined process of control. The central bank becomes both the issuer of the currency and the enforcer of the rules, with no recourse and no appeal. The political kill switch is the final, logical endpoint of this system. It is the tool that guarantees compliance. While the day-to-day controls might be subtle, the nudges and shoves, the kill switch is the ultimate threat that hangs over every citizen. It is the digital equivalent of a loaded gun held to the head of society, a constant reminder that your access to the economy is not a right, but a privilege that can be revoked at any time, for any reason. This is not a system designed for resilience. It is a system designed for absolute control, and its greatest weakness, its total centralization, is also its most terrifying feature. The architects of control. This global, coordinated push towards programmable money did not emerge from a popular movement. There were no citizens marching in the streets demanding that their savings be given an expiration date. This is a top-down revolution, engineered and driven by a small, interconnected network of immensely powerful, unelected global institutions. To understand the agenda, you must look at the architects. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is an open-source, documented plan. You simply have to read their own reports and listen to their own speeches. The intellectual and logistical hub of this movement is an organization that most people have never heard of, the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, located in Basel, Switzerland. The BIS is the central bank for the world's central banks. It is where the heads of the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, and the People's Bank of China meet in private to coordinate global monetary policy, far from the prying eyes of voters or national legislatures. For years, the BIS has been the most vocal and influential proponent of CBDCs. Their innovation hub is a driving force behind the pilot programs we see around the world. And they are remarkably candid about their goals. As we've already noted, BIS General Manager Agustin Carstens made it clear that the key difference between a CBDC and cash is that the central bank will have absolute control. But it goes deeper. In a 2021 report, the BIS stated that a CBDC architecture could be designed to allow for direct implementation of policy, such as helicopter drops, negative interest rates, or consumption-stimulating measures. They openly discuss the ability to program money. In another speech, Hyun Song-shin, the head of research at the BIS, described a future where the same wallet could hold multiple types of CBDC, some of which could be programmed to have expiry dates or be used only for certain types of purchases. They are not hiding the ball. They are telling us exactly what they are building. The second key architect is the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. The IMF's traditional role is to act as a lender of last resort to countries facing financial crisis. This role gives it enormous leverage to impose policy on national governments. In recent years, the IMF has become a zealous advocate for CBDCs, publishing extensive guides and technical handbooks for countries looking to implement them. In a 2020 speech, the then managing director of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, mused about a future where the IMF could directly implement its policy recommendations through a CBDC. She spoke of the ability to program the currency to enforce conditionalities, the set of policy actions that the IMF requires a country to take in exchange for a loan. For example, if the IMF wants a country to reduce its public sector wage bill, they could program the CBDC to block payments to certain government employees. This would transform the IMF from an institution that makes policy recommendations into one that can directly enforce them at a granular level, completely bypassing the sovereignty of the national government. In a blog post from 2023, the IMF even explored the idea of programming a CBDC to encourage certain social outcomes, explicitly linking spending to social goals defined by the central authority. The third major node in this network is the World Economic Forum, or WEF, the organization famous for its annual meeting of global elites in Davos, Switzerland. The WEF acts as the public relations and policy laundering arm of this movement. It brings together leaders from central banking, commercial banking, technology corporations, and government to build consensus and create the public narrative. The WEF has published a CBDC Policymaker Toolkit, a step-by-step guide for governments on how to implement a digital currency, and crucially, how to sell it to their populations. Their literature consistently emphasizes the benefits of a public-private partnership, where the central bank issues the currency, but technology firms and commercial banks build the wallets and user-facing applications. This model ensures that the major corporate players are on board, as it creates immense new business opportunities in data analysis, digital identity, and payment processing. In a WEF article titled The Great Reset, they speak of the need to reimagine capitalism and use the crisis of the pandemic as an opportunity to build a more controlled, stakeholder-driven economy. A programmable CBDC is the perfect tool for this vision, as it allows for the precise, top-down management of economic activity in line with the goals of these self-appointed stakeholders. These institutions, the BIS, the IMF, and the WEF, form the ideological and institutional core of the CBDC agenda. They write the white papers, host the conferences, and coordinate the actions of national central banks. And when you read their documents, a clear picture emerges. They see the world as a complex system to be managed. They see human beings as irrational actors whose behavior must be corrected. They see democracy as a messy and inefficient obstacle to the implementation of what they believe is sound, data-driven policy. They are not mustache-twirling villains. They are technocrats who genuinely believe they are engineering a better world. But it is a world built on a foundation of control, a world where economic freedom is replaced by algorithmic permission. The plan is not secret. It is laid out in hundreds of pages of publicly available reports and speeches. They are counting on the fact that most people will not read them and will instead accept the convenient story of progress and efficiency. They are the architects, and the blueprint is in plain sight. The illusion of choice. As public awareness of the dangers of CBDCs grows, the architects of the system will inevitably shift their strategy. They will deploy a carefully crafted counter-narrative designed to soothe fears and neutralize opposition. This narrative will be built around a central, reassuring promise, the promise of choice. They will say, of course, we won't eliminate cash. Of course, you can still use your commercial bank account. The CBDC will just be another option, a public choice that exists alongside the private alternatives. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. This argument is strategically brilliant because it appears to address the core concerns of freedom and privacy head-on. It reframes the debate, moving it away from the terrifying features of programmability and towards a comfortable discussion about market choice. But it is a profoundly dishonest argument. It is an illusion, designed to obscure the fact that in the new system they are building, the form of money you hold in your hand will ultimately be irrelevant. The control is not at the consumer level. It is at the foundational level of the financial system itself. To understand this illusion, you need to understand the two main models for a CBDC that are being discussed: the retail model and the wholesale model. A retail CBDC is what we have been primarily discussing so far. This is the model where individual citizens hold accounts directly with the central bank. It's the most direct form of control and also the most politically controversial. It's the model that most clearly evokes fears of Big Brother and direct government surveillance. Because it is so controversial, many Western central banks, including the Federal Reserve, are hesitant to lead with this approach. Instead, they are focusing their public efforts on a wholesale CBDC. This model is far more subtle and therefore far more insidious. In a wholesale system, only commercial banks and other large financial institutions can hold accounts at the central bank. Individual citizens continue to bank with their familiar commercial banks like J.P. Morgan or Bank of America. On the surface, nothing seems to change for the average person. You still have a bank account, a debit card, and the illusion of dealing with a private institution. But here is the critical difference. In a wholesale CBDC system, the very nature of the money that commercial banks use to settle payments between themselves is transformed. Today, banks settle their accounts using something called central bank reserves. A wholesale CBDC replaces these reserves with a new, programmable digital token issued by the central bank. Think of the financial system as having two layers. There's the retail layer, where you and I make payments, and there's a wholesale layer, the deep plumbing of the system where banks settle billions of dollars in transactions with each other every day. By taking control of this wholesale layer, the central bank gains the power to impose its rules on the entire system, from the top down. Here's how it works. Let's say the central bank wants to implement a policy restricting the purchase of gasoline. In a retail CBDC model, they would program your personal wallet to decline the transaction. In a wholesale model, they do something far more elegant. They simply program the wholesale ledger so that any settlement request originating from a gas station's merchant code is blocked, or perhaps taxed at a punitive rate. Your commercial bank, which must use the wholesale CBDC to settle its books at the end of the day, has no choice but to enforce this rule on its customers. Your debit card from a private bank will be declined at the pump, not because your bank is making a political decision, but because the very settlement asset they rely on has been programmed by the central bank to make that transaction impossible. From your perspective, the outcome is identical. You are unable to buy gas, but the mechanism is hidden, buried deep in the interbank plumbing. You might get angry at your commercial bank, but they will simply throw up their hands and say, "It's not our decision. It's a rule from the central bank's new settlement platform." The commercial banks become mere pass-through entities, enforcement arms for the policy dictates of the central bank. This is the end game. A wholesale CBDC gives the central bank ultimate control over the entire financial system, without the political headache of managing millions of individual retail accounts. Every regulation, every restriction, every negative interest rate can be coded directly into the settlement asset itself. The money in your commercial bank account is no longer a claim on neutral central bank reserves. It becomes a claim on a programmable token that comes with strings attached. The entire private banking sector is effectively nationalized at the settlement layer, forced to operate within the parameters set by the central bank's code. So the promise of choice is a mirage. You can choose to use cash, but as we saw in Nigeria, the state can make cash scarce and difficult to use. You can choose to use your commercial bank account, but that bank will be forced to enforce the CBDC's programmable rules upon you. The choice is between a direct digital leash, retail CBDC, and an indirect digital leash, wholesale CBDC. But either way, it's a leash. The goal is to capture the core of the system, the settlement layer. Once they control that, they control everything that flows through it. The illusion of choice is the anesthetic they will use to sedate the public, while this fundamental surgery is performed on the heart of our financial system. The lines of resistance. The architecture of control being built is formidable, but it is not invincible. Its implementation is not a foregone conclusion. Understanding the nature of this system is the first step, but the second, crucial step is to understand the lines of resistance. This is not a battle that will be won with protests in the streets alone. It is a battle of technology, of policy, and of individual choice. It is a fight to preserve the very meaning of economic freedom, and it will be fought on several key fronts. The first and most fundamental line of resistance is the preservation of physical cash. The architects of the CBDC system understand that cash is the primary obstacle to their vision of total control. Cash is anonymous. It is permissionless. It is a peer-to-peer technology that requires no intermediary. It is the escape hatch from negative interest rates and financial surveillance. For this reason, the war on cash will intensify in the coming years. We will be told that cash is a relic, a tool for criminals, a vector for disease. They will make it inconvenient to use and difficult to obtain, just as they did in Nigeria. Resisting this requires a conscious, collective effort. It means choosing to use cash whenever possible, even when digital payments are more convenient. It means supporting businesses that continue to accept cash. It means vocally opposing policies that seek to limit cash withdrawals or phase out large denomination bills. Every transaction made with cash is a small vote for privacy and autonomy. It is a signal to the system that there is still demand for an offline, sovereign form of money. Preserving cash is not about nostalgia. It is about preserving a final, physical check on the absolute power of the digital state. The second critical line of resistance lies in the political and legislative arena. The rollout of a CBDC, particularly a retail version, will require new laws and enabling legislation in most democratic countries. This is a crucial choke point where public pressure can be applied. Citizens must demand a clear and unambiguous prohibition on the features of control. Legislation must be passed that explicitly bans the programming of expiry dates, spending restrictions, and negative interest rates into any future digital currency. We must demand that any digital dollar have the same neutral, fungible, privacy-preserving properties as a physical dollar. This is not a partisan issue. It is a fundamental issue of civil liberties. Lawmakers from across the political spectrum must be educated on the profound difference between a simple digital payment system and a programmable social control grid. The debate cannot be allowed to be framed around modernization. It must be framed around the preservation of economic freedom and privacy against the encroachment of a technocratic state. The third, and perhaps most durable, line of resistance is the development and adoption of alternative financial rails that are, by their very nature, immune to centralized control. This is where truly decentralized, censorship-resistant digital assets like Bitcoin come into play. While the term cryptocurrency has been tarnished by years of speculative mania and outright scams, the core innovation of a decentralized, peer-to-peer electronic cash system remains one of the most important technological breakthroughs of our time. Bitcoin as a system has no central authority. There is no CEO to subpoena, no central server to shut down. Its monetary policy is fixed in code and cannot be arbitrarily changed by a committee of central bankers. Transactions are settled on a global, distributed ledger that is not controlled by any single nation or corporation. It is, in essence, an independent financial system operating in parallel to the legacy system. It is a lifeboat. Adopting and understanding this technology is a crucial act of self-defense. It is about having an alternative, a way to save, transact, and hold value outside of the walls of the centrally controlled system. The existence of a viable, decentralized alternative acts as a powerful check on the ambitions of the central planners. If they make the rules of their CBDC system too onerous, too restrictive, they risk pushing more and more people to opt out into a parallel economy that they cannot control. This is not about getting rich quick. It is about preserving the option to exit. It is about ensuring that the state's financial system must compete for users, rather than simply commanding them. This is the ultimate struggle of the 21st century. It is a battle between two competing visions for our digital future. One vision is top-down, centralized, and controlled, where money is an instrument of the state, and economic life is a privilege granted and managed by an algorithm. The other vision is bottom-up, decentralized, and free, where money is a neutral tool for human interaction, and the network is governed by transparent rules instead of powerful rulers. The path we take will be determined not by a single decision, but by 1,000 small choices we make every day. The choice to use cash, the choice to demand better laws, the choice to explore and build alternatives. The stakes could not be higher. This is not merely about finance or technology. It is about the fundamental nature of human freedom in a digital age. The lines have been drawn.